The emergency beacon died with a pathetic whimper, its red light fading into the green gloom of the alien jungle. Alex Reed pulled his hand back from the twisted metal that had once been his ship's communications array. 3 days since the crash, and the silence from space felt heavier than the humid air pressing against his torn uniform. Something rustled in the undergrowth behind him. Alex spun around, plasma pistol drawn, but saw only shadows dancing between massive tree trunks. The forest of Thyros held secrets that made his skin crawl. Every sound could mean death. Every shadow could hide claws or fangs or worse. He had learned that lesson the hard way when a pack of six-legged predators had cornered him near the wreckage yesterday. Only luck and a lucky shot had saved him then. The rustling came again, closer this time. Alex backed toward the hull of his ship, keeping the weapon steady. His hands shook slightly from hunger and exhaustion. The emergency rations would last, maybe 2 more days. After that, he would have to venture deeper into this green hell to find food, and something told him that was a death sentence. A low growl echoed through the trees, followed by another from a different direction. Then another. Alex felt his heart pound as he realized the truth. They were surrounding him. Multiple predators, working together, cutting off his escape routes. He pressed his back against the cold metal of the ship and tried to calculate his chances. The plasma pistol had maybe 8 shots left. Against a coordinated pack attack, that might not be enough. The first one emerged from behind a cluster of fern-like plants. Alex nearly dropped his weapon in shock. It walked upright on 2 legs, but everything else about it screamed predator. Scales covered its body like natural armor, shifting from dark green to brown as it moved. Its head was elongated, filled with teeth that gleamed in the filtered sunlight. Yellow eyes fixed on Alex with an intelligence that made his blood run cold. This was no mindless beast. This thing was thinking, planning, evaluating. 2 more appeared on his flanks, moving with practiced coordination. They carried weapons, crude but effective-looking spears with stone points. The center one, larger than the others, spoke in a series of clicks and hisses that somehow conveyed meaning despite being completely alien. The others responded, adjusting their positions. Alex kept his pistol trained on the leader but knew it was hopeless. Even if he killed one, the others would be on him before he could turn. He had studied dozens of alien species during his years, in the Exploration Corps, but nothing had prepared him for this. These creatures radiated a lethal competence that spoke of countless hunts, countless victories over prey. The leader stepped closer, close enough that Alex could see the scars covering its hide. Old wounds from battles survived, each mark a testament to its prowess. When it spoke again, the sounds were different, more complex. Alex felt a chill as he realized what was happening. The creature was trying to communicate with him, testing different vocal patterns to see if he would respond. Slowly, carefully, Alex lowered his weapon. The gesture felt like suicide, but running or fighting would definitely be suicide. The leader tilted its head, studying this strange, soft creature that had fallen from the sky. It spoke again, and this time Alex caught something almost familiar in the rhythm. Not words he could understand, but a cadence that suggested questions. Alex touched his chest with his free hand. The creatures watched intently as he spoke his name slowly, clearly. The leader repeated the sounds with surprising accuracy, then gestured to itself with one clawed hand. The name that emerged was a combination of clicks and growls that Alex could barely wrap his human throat around, but he tried. A sound that might have been amusement came from the other creatures. Hours passed as they established basic communication. The leader, who Alex came to call Krath, seemed to be evaluating him like a hunter might evaluate prey. But something had changed in those yellow eyes. Where there had been predatory hunger, now there was something else. Curiosity, perhaps, or even a grudging recognition of intelligence. The breakthrough came when Alex managed to activate his portable scanner. The device beeped and displayed readings from the surrounding area. Krath and his companions reacted. With startled interest, crowding closer to examine the glowing screen. Alex showed them how it detected different materials, how it could map the terrain, how it could identify potential threats. For the first time, he saw something like respect in their expressions. Krath spoke at length with his companions, their discussion growing heated at times. Alex caught gestures toward him, toward the crashed ship, toward the deeper jungle. Finally, Krath turned back to Alex and spoke in what was clearly a command. The meaning was unmistakable, even without shared language. Come with us, or die here alone. Alex looked at his ruined ship, at the failed beacon, at the hostile jungle pressing in from all sides. He thought about the emergency rations running out, about the predators that hunted in the night, about the growing certainty that no rescue would come. Then he looked at these savage, intelligent creatures who could have killed him easily, but had chosen to communicate instead. He nodded and holstered his weapon. The journey to their settlement took most of the day. Alex marveled at how easily the creatures moved through terrain that left him stumbling and gasping. They seemed to flow between the trees like liquid shadow, their scaled skin blending perfectly with the dappled light. Occasionally, Krath would pause and point out some danger. A particular plant whose touch could kill. A watering hole where things with too many teeth waited for the unwary. A section of ground that looked solid but would collapse into a pit, lined with spikes. Each lesson drove home the same message. This world belonged to predators, and Alex was not one of them. Not naturally, anyway. But intelligence had its own kind of power, and as the day wore on, he began to see opportunities where before he had seen only threats. His scanner could detect dangers that even Krath's keen senses might miss. His knowledge of technology might prove useful to beings who still used stone weapons. His human perspective might reveal solutions that their predator mindset overlooked. The settlement, when they finally reached it, was a revelation. Dozens of the creatures moved about their daily tasks with the fluid grace Alex had come to expect. But what surprised him was the complexity of their society. These were not simple hunters. They were builders, crafters, thinkers. Their shelters showed sophisticated understanding of engineering. Their tools, while primitive by human standards, were expertly made and perfectly suited to their environment. As night fell over Thyros, Alex sat by a fire surrounded by alien predators who could tear him apart without effort. But for the first time since the crash, he felt something approaching hope. He was still stranded, still cut off from his own kind, still facing almost certain death, but he was no longer facing it alone, and in a universe full of predators, sometimes an alliance. Born of necessity was the most valuable thing of all. The morning hunt began before dawn, with Alex stumbling through the darkness while his Thyrosian companions moved like ghosts through the underbrush. 3 weeks had passed since they had accepted him into their tribe, and he was still learning their ways. Every day brought new lessons in survival, most of them painful. Shen, a young warrior barely past adolescence, crouched beside Alex and pointed toward a cluster of rocks ahead. The gesture meant prey, something Alex had learned after watching dozens of similar hunts. His scanner confirmed movement behind the stones, something large and warm-blooded. Shen's eyes gleamed with anticipation as he prepared to charge forward, spear raised. Alex grabbed his arm and shook his head. The young Thyrosian looked confused, then annoyed. In their culture, hesitation meant cowardice, and cowardice meant death. But Alex had learned to read his scanner's displays in ways that could save lives. 3 heat signatures, not 1. The prey was not alone. Before he could explain, Shen shrugged off his grip and rushed forward with a battle cry that echoed through the forest. The reaction was immediate and terrifying. The rocks exploded outward as 3 massive creatures erupted from concealment. They looked like a nightmare fusion of spider and shark, each one the size of a small vehicle. Their bodies were armored in black chitin, and their multiple limbs ended in razor-sharp claws. The Vorthak had been hunting the same prey, and now they had found something better. Shen's spear bounced harmlessly off the lead creature's armor. Its mandibles snapped closed inches from his head as he rolled desperately to one side. The other two Vorthak moved to flank him, their movements perfectly coordinated. Alex had seen this before during other encounters. The creatures shared some kind of group mind that made them incredibly dangerous in packs. The rest of the hunting party was too far away to help. Shen would be dead in seconds unless someone acted. Alex raised his plasma pistol and fired 3 quick shots at the nearest Vorthak. The energy bolt struck its head and sent it staggering backward with an inhuman shriek. The other 2 immediately turned toward him, abandoning their attack on Shen. What happened next became legend among the tribe. Instead of running or standing his ground like a Therosian warrior, Alex did something completely unexpected. He ran toward the creatures, firing as he moved, but not at them directly. His shots struck the ground, the trees, the rocks around them. Each impact sent up clouds of debris and smoke. Within seconds, the area was filled with dust and confusion. The Vorthak lost sight of their targets in the chaos. Their coordination broke down as they searched blindly for enemies they could no longer see. Alex grabbed Shen and pulled him toward a fallen log, both of them staying low as plasma bolts and debris continued to rain down around them. Through hand signals and whispered words, Alex explained his plan. When the smoke began to clear, the Vorthak found themselves facing not confused prey, but a carefully orchestrated ambush. Alex's scanner had mapped their positions even through the dust cloud. Shen struck from the left while Alex provided covering fire from the right. The young Therosian's spear found the soft joint between armor plates on the first creature's leg. Alex's plasma bolts kept the others at bay while Shen moved to his next target. The battle was over in minutes. 3 Vorthak lay dead, their black blood staining the forest floor. Shen stared at Alex with something approaching awe. The human had not only saved his life but had shown him a completely new way of fighting. Instead of charging headlong into danger, Alex had used misdirection, terrain, and tactical thinking to turn a hopeless situation into a victory. Word of the encounter spread quickly through the tribe. That evening, as they shared the meat from their successful hunt, Krath spoke at length about what had happened. Alex understood enough of their language now to follow the conversation. The chieftain was analyzing the battle, breaking down each decision and its consequences. The conclusion was clear. The soft human had warrior's instincts, even if he lacked a warrior's body. Other hunting parties began requesting Alex's presence. His scanner proved invaluable for detecting hidden threats, and his unconventional tactics often succeeded where traditional Therosian methods might fail. He learned to work with their natural advantages while compensating for their blind spots. The Therosians were incredibly strong, fast, and tough, but they sometimes lacked patience, and their pride could lead them into traps. Alex began to understand the broader conflict consuming this world. The Vorthak were not just another predator species. They were expanding their territory systematically, building vast hive networks that consumed everything in their path. Individual Therosian warriors could defeat individual Vorthak, but the insects fought as a coordinated whole, while the reptiles fought as individuals. It was a war of attrition that the Therosians were slowly losing. The truth became clear during a reconnaissance mission deep into Vorthak territory. Alex and 3 Therosian scouts watched from concealment as hundreds of the creatures worked to expand their largest hive complex. The organization was perfect, each individual knowing exactly what to do without any visible communication. They moved like parts of a single organism, which in many ways they were. Watching them work, Alex felt a chill of recognition. He had seen this before, in different forms. Ant colonies on Earth, certain computer networks, even some human military units that had trained together for years. The power of perfect coordination, of individual elements working toward a common goal with absolute efficiency. The Thyrosians had strength, intelligence, and courage, but they lacked this crucial element. The attack on the settlement came without warning. Alex was helping repair weapons when the alarm cry echoed through the trees. Vorthak, hundreds of them, pouring out of the jungle in a coordinated assault. This was not a hunting party or a chance encounter. This was war. The battle that followed was unlike anything Alex had experienced. Thyrosian warriors fought with incredible bravery, their natural weapons and armor making them formidable opponents. But for every Vorthak they killed, two more seemed to take its place. The insects attacked in waves, each group supporting the others with perfect timing. Alex found himself in the thick of the fighting, his plasma pistol adding to the defensive fire. But as the hours passed, he began to see the pattern. The Thyrosians were fighting as individuals, each warrior choosing targets and tactics based on personal judgment. There was no overall strategy, no coordination beyond basic pack behavior. They were losing because they could not match the Vorthak's unified approach. On the second day of the siege, Krath was badly wounded while defending the nursery areas where the tribe's young sheltered. The great chieftain fell with a Vorthak's claws buried in his side, his own weapons having accounted for a dozen enemies. As the tribe's healers worked to save him, Alex realized something that changed everything. The Thyrosians were not losing because they lacked courage or strength. They were losing because they had never learned to fight as anything more than a collection of individuals. Each warrior was a master of personal combat, but none of them understood how to be part of something larger. They needed to learn what humans had discovered thousands of years ago. Sometimes the greatest strength came not from individual prowess, but from individuals choosing to work together. As night fell over the besieged settlement, Alex sat by Krath's bedside and began to plan. The Vorthak would attack again at dawn, and when they did, they would face something new. Not a collection of individual warriors fighting separate battles, but a coordinated defense that could match their unified assault. He just had to convince a species of proud predators to trust each other completely, to fight as one while remaining themselves. It should have been impossible. But as Alex looked around at the wounded warriors, at the determination in their eyes despite their losses, he felt the first stirrings of hope. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy, nor the fastest, nor the most naturally gifted. But they had learned to transcend individual limitations through cooperation. Perhaps it was time to teach that lesson to others. The real war was about to begin. Dawn came too soon, bringing with it the sound Alex had learned to fear. The clicking, chittering communication of the Vorthak as they prepared for another assault. From his position on the settlement's defensive wall, he could see them moving, through the trees like a black tide. Yesterday's battle had been just a test. Today they would come in full force. Krath lay on his sleeping mat, conscious but weak from his wounds. The great chieftain's breathing was labored, and his usually bright yellow eyes were dim with pain. Around him, the tribe's remaining warriors prepared for what they all knew might be their final battle. They sharpened spears, checked armor, and spoke in low voices about dying with honor. Alex watched them and felt a familiar frustration. These were incredible fighters, each one worth 3 or 4 Vorthak in single combat. Their natural advantages were overwhelming, scales that could turn aside most attacks, strength that could crush bones, reflexes faster than anything Alex had ever seen. Yet they were losing a war against enemies they should easily defeat. The answer had been forming in his mind for days, but now it crystallized with perfect clarity. The Thyrosians fought like apex predators, because that was exactly what they were. Each warrior was a perfect killing machine, trained from birth to rely on personal skill and natural gifts. They formed hunting parties when necessary, but even then each fighter chose his own targets and tactics. The Vorthak were different. Alex had studied their attack patterns during yesterday's battle, watching how they moved and struck. no individual. Insect was as dangerous as a single Thyrosian, but they never fought as individuals. Every movement was coordinated, every attack timed to support others. They were parts of a larger organism, sacrificing personal initiative for perfect group efficiency. Both approaches had strengths, but both had critical weaknesses too. The Thyrosians' individual prowess meant nothing when they were surrounded and overwhelmed by coordinated enemies. The Vorthak's perfect unity made them predictable, vulnerable to tactics they could not adapt to quickly. But there was a third option, something neither species had discovered. Alex had seen it in human military units, in rescue teams, in research expeditions. Individuals who chose to work together while keeping their ability to think and act independently. Not the blind unity of a hive mind, not the chaotic individualism of competing predators, but something in between. Coordinated free will. Shen approached, his young face marked by yesterday's fighting. The warrior who had once charged recklessly, into battle now moved with more caution, his brush with death having taught him valuable lessons. He spoke to Alex in the hybrid language they had developed over the weeks, part Thyrosian clicks and part human words. The Vorthak come again soon, many more this time. We fight hard, but... He gestured helplessly toward the forest where black shapes moved between the trees. The meaning was clear. There were too many. Alex turned to face the young warrior fully. During the past weeks, Shen had become something like a student, eager to learn the strange new fighting methods the human employed. If anyone might understand what Alex was about to propose, it would be him. Shen, when you hunt in a pack, what do you do? The young Thyrosian looked confused by the simple question. Hunt prey, kill enemies, take territory. But how do you choose which prey to attack? Who decides the target? Strongest warrior leads. Others follow. Each fights own battle. Alex nodded, unsurprised. Pack hunting among Thyrosians was really just individual hunting in the same area. Each warrior made independent decisions based on immediate circumstances. There was no real coordination, no shared planning beyond the most basic level. What if there was another way? What if warriors could fight together but still think for themselves? Shen's expression showed he did not understand. The concept was alien to his entire cultural background. In his world, you either fought alone or you followed orders blindly. The idea of conscious cooperation between equals had never occurred to him. Alex spent the next hour explaining human military tactics, using simple words and hand gestures to bridge the language gap. He drew diagrams in the dirt, showing how soldiers could coordinate their actions while maintaining individual judgment. How a squad could work together to achieve goals no single fighter could accomplish alone. The breakthrough came when Alex demonstrated with other warriors. He had them practice a simple maneuver, surrounding a target while maintaining communication and mutual support. At first, they moved awkwardly, their instincts fighting against the need to consider others' positions. But gradually, something clicked. One warrior found himself in perfect position to strike because his companion had maneuvered to drive the enemy toward him. Another discovered that covering his ally's retreat actually set up his own attack opportunity. They were still thinking, still making individual choices, but those choices were informed by awareness of the larger battle. Word spread through the settlement as more warriors joined the practice sessions. Some were skeptical, viewing the tactics as unnecessarily complex. Why coordinate attacks when individual skill had served them for generations? But others began to see the potential. They had watched yesterday's battle, seen how the Vorthak's unity had overwhelmed traditional Thyrosian tactics. Krath called for Alex as the sun reached its peak. The chieftain was weaker than before, but his mind remained sharp. He had been listening to the reports from the training sessions, trying to understand what the human was proposing. These tactics, Krath spoke slowly, choosing words carefully. Warriors fight together but think alone? Yes. Each warrior makes choices. But those choices consider the whole battle, not just personal combat. The old chieftain was quiet for a long time, his yellow eyes distant with thought. Finally, he spoke again. Vorthak fight as one mind with many bodies. We fight as many minds with separate bodies. You show third path? Alex felt a surge of excitement. Krath understood, at least partially. Many minds working together by choice. Stronger than hive mind because it can adapt. Stronger than individuals because it can coordinate. The concept was revolutionary for a species that had always equated coordination with weakness, individual strength with virtue. But as the sounds of approaching Vorthak grew louder, philosophical considerations gave way to practical necessity. They could maintain their traditional ways and die with honor, or they could try something new and possibly survive. The first test came sooner than expected. A small group of Vorthak scouts probed the settlement's defenses, looking for weak points before the main assault. Instead of rushing to meet them individually, Alex coordinated a response using his new tactics. 5 warriors moved in careful coordination, each supporting the others, while maintaining freedom to adapt to changing circumstances. The result was devastating. The Vorthak scouts found themselves facing not individual opponents they could isolate and overwhelm, but a coordinated team that anticipated their moves and countered them systematically. Every retreat was cut off, every attack met with perfectly positioned defenders. The engagement was over in minutes, with all scouts eliminated and no Therosian casualties. More importantly, the participating warriors felt something they had never experienced before. They had been part of something larger than themselves without losing their individual identity. They had fought as one without becoming mindless drones. The sensation was intoxicating, empowering in a way that pure individual combat had never been. As evening approached, bringing with it the certainty of the final battle, Alex looked around at the transformed settlement. Warriors, who had never worked together before, were coordinating complex defensive maneuvers. Veterans who had relied on strength and reflexes for decades were learning to think tactically about positioning and timing. The change was not complete, might never be complete. Generations of instinct could not be overturned in a single day. But it was a beginning, a first step toward something that could revolutionize how the Thyrosians fought their wars. Standing on the defensive wall as darkness gathered, Alex realized he had discovered something profound about his own species. Humans were not the strongest, fastest, or most intelligent beings in the galaxy, but they had stumbled upon a form of organization that transcended individual limitations while preserving individual freedom. Tomorrow would test whether that lesson could be taught to others, whether beings evolved as solitary predators could learn to fight as something greater than the sum of their parts, whether humanity's greatest gift could save a species that had welcomed a stranded explorer and made him part of their tribe. The Vorthak were coming, and this time they would face something new. Not mindless unity, not chaotic individualism, but coordinated free will, the rarest and most powerful form of strength in a universe full of predators. The training ground buzzed with frustrated energy as Alex watched another coordinated maneuver fall apart. 3 experienced warriors had collided with each other while attempting a flanking movement, their natural predator instincts overriding the tactical discipline he was trying to teach. One of them, a veteran named Tor, threw down his spear in disgust. "This is madness," Tor snarled, his scarred hide rippling with agitation. "We are hunters, not herd animals. My strength is my own, not something to be shared with weaklings." Several other warriors murmured agreement. These were beings who had survived countless battles through individual prowess, and asking them to rely on others felt like asking them to cut off their own claws. Alex understood their resistance, but time was running short. The Vorthak had been quiet for 2 days, which meant they were preparing something massive. Alex stepped into the center of the group, his small human form dwarfed by the reptilian warriors around him. Tor, you killed 12 Vorthak in yesterday's scout battle. The veteran straightened with pride. It had been an impressive display of individual combat skill, exactly the kind of heroics that Thyrosian culture celebrated. Now watch. Alex gestured to 5 younger warriors who had been practicing the new tactics. Attack them as you would attack a group of Vorthak. Tor looked skeptical but hefted his spear. He was easily the equal of any 2 of the younger fighters, and his experience gave him additional advantages. When Alex signaled the start, Tor charged with the fluid grace that made Thyrosians such deadly predators. What happened next shocked every observer. The 5 younger warriors moved like parts of a single organism, but unlike the Vorthak, each retained his individual identity and judgment. As Tor engaged the first defender, the others flowed around him, cutting off escape, routes and attack angles he had not even considered. Within seconds, he found himself surrounded, multiple spear points at his throat. The key difference was that each warrior remained aware of the overall tactical situation while handling his individual role. When Tor tried to break through one section of their formation, that defender gave ground deliberately, drawing him into a trap prepared by the others. When he switched tactics and tried a different approach, they adapted instantly, their individual decisions guided by shared awareness of the larger battle. Tor lowered his spear, his expression stunned. How did they know what I would do before I knew it myself? Alex smiled. This was the breakthrough he had been hoping for. They did not know, but they were ready for anything because they were thinking together while fighting as individuals. Each warrior watched not just his own opponent, but the whole battle. The demonstration had its intended effect. Warriors who had been skeptical began volunteering for training sessions. They could see the practical advantages of the new tactics, even if they still struggled with the cultural implications. Fighting as a coordinated unit did not have to mean weakness, it could actually multiply individual strength. But implementing, the techniques proved harder than Alex had expected. Thyrosian society had no traditions of cooperative warfare. Their military training, such as it was, focused entirely on personal combat skills. Concepts like battlefield communication, mutual support, and tactical flexibility were completely foreign. Alex had to start with the basics, simple hand signals that could convey information during battle, basic formations that allowed warriors to support each other without getting in each other's way, elementary coordination exercises that built trust and familiarity between fighters, who had never worked together before. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Shen, the young warrior Alex had saved during the hunt, approached him with an idea. What if we hunt together first? Not fight, just hunt. Learn to work as pack before we fight as army. It was brilliant in its simplicity. Hunting was already familiar, already accepted within Thyrosian culture. If Alex could teach them to coordinate, while hunting prey, the same skills could be applied to fighting enemies. The hunting expeditions that followed became legendary within the tribe. Groups of warriors learning to work together brought down prey that individual hunters could never have tackled. They developed techniques for driving large animals into carefully prepared ambushes, for coordinating attacks on multiple targets, simultaneously for supporting wounded companions without compromising the hunt. More importantly, they began to trust each other. Warriors who had spent their entire lives relying only on themselves discovered the strange satisfaction of being part of something larger. They learned to read each other's movements, to anticipate needs and opportunities, to think beyond their immediate circumstances. Alex watched their progress with growing excitement and growing dread. The tactics were working better than he had dared hope, but the Vorthak were still out there. Every day of quiet from the enemy meant they were preparing something larger, more coordinated than anything the Thyrosians had faced before. The enemy's plan became clear when refugees began arriving from the outer settlements. Entire communities had been overrun by Vorthak swarms moving with unprecedented coordination. The insects were not just expanding their territory anymore, they were conducting a systematic campaign of extermination. The descriptions the refugees brought chilled Alex to the bone. Thousands of Vorthak moving in perfect unison, their attacks timed with mechanical precision. Traditional Thyrosian defenses had crumbled within hours, overwhelmed by an enemy that fought as a single immense organism. Krath, still recovering from his wounds but strong enough to lead, called a war council. The assembled chieftains and war leaders listened grimly as the refugees described the approaching threat. One settlement had held out for 3 days before being overrun. Another had fallen in less than an hour. The pattern was clear and terrifying. They come for us next, Krath stated simply. Our settlement is the largest remaining. When we fall, they will own this entire region. The debate that followed revealed the deep divisions within Thyrosian leadership. The older warriors wanted to meet the enemy in traditional fashion, individual champions facing whatever came with personal courage and skill. The younger fighters, those who had trained with Alex, argued for the new tactics. The argument grew, heated, with some warriors questioning whether the humans' strange ideas were worth abandoning generations of proven methods. Alex listened to the debate with growing frustration. Time was running out, and they were wasting precious hours arguing about philosophy. Finally, he stood and spoke, his voice cutting through the heated discussion. The Vorthak have already adapted to your traditional tactics. That is why the other settlements fell so quickly. If we fight them the same way, we will lose the same way. An older warrior named Grek challenged him directly. And if we follow your strange human ways, we might lose our very identity. Better to die as Thyrosians than live as pale copies of something else. The accusation stung because it contained a grain of truth. Alex was asking them to change fundamental aspects of their culture, to abandon methods that had served them for countless generations, but he was also trying to save their lives. I am not asking you to become human, Alex replied carefully. I am asking you to become something new. Something that keeps the best of what you are while adding something that could help you survive. The debate continued through the night, but by morning, a decision had been reached. They would try the new tactics, not because everyone believed in them, but because the alternative was certain death. Half the warriors would train in coordinated fighting techniques, while the others would prepare traditional defenses as backup. The next few days blurred together in a frenzy of preparation. Alex worked with group after group, teaching basic coordination to fighters who had never needed to consider anything beyond their personal combat skills. Progress was uneven and frustrating, but gradually, the pieces began falling into place. The real test came when scouts reported the main Vorthak force approaching. From the high observation posts, Alex could see them moving through the forest like a black carpet. Thousands upon thousands of the insectoid creatures, their movements synchronized with inhuman precision. At their center moved something Alex had only heard described in frightened whispers: a queen. The creature was massive, easily the size of a building, carried on the backs of countless drones. Her presence seemed to coordinate the entire swarm, directing their movements with telepathic commands that created perfect unity of purpose. Against such an enemy, individual heroics would be meaningless. Only coordination could match coordination. As the sun set on what might be their final day, Alex stood on the settlement's walls and watched his adopted people make their preparations. Some still moved as individual warriors, sharpening personal weapons and preparing for personal battles. But others worked in coordinated groups, checking equipment and reviewing tactical plans together. Tomorrow would determine whether humanity's greatest gift could be taught to others. Whether the art of war could triumph over the raw power of perfect unity. Whether a small settlement of reptilian predators, guided by a stranded human explorer, could stand against the most coordinated enemy their world had ever seen. The Vorthak were coming, and this time there would be no retreat, No second chances. Victory or extinction. Unity or chaos. The future of two species would be decided by beings who had learned, perhaps too late, that sometimes the greatest strength came not from individual prowess, but from individuals choosing to stand together. The first wave of Vorthok struck just after dawn, their chittering war cries filling the air like the sound of 1,000 breaking bones. Alex gripped his plasma pistol and watched from his position on the central command platform as black shapes poured from the forest in numbers that defied comprehension. The sight should have filled him with despair, but instead he felt a strange calm. Everything had been building to this moment. Around the settlement's perimeter, two very different kinds of defenders waited. On the eastern wall, traditional Therosian warriors prepared to meet the enemy as their ancestors had, with individual courage and personal skill. Their weapons gleamed in the morning light, and their battle cries answered the Vorthak challenge with defiant roars. They would die as heroes, each one fighting his own war against impossible odds. On the western wall, something unprecedented in Therosian history was taking shape. Warriors moved in coordinated groups, their positions carefully chosen to support each other. Hand signals passed information along the line faster than any messenger could run. Weapons were positioned not for individual glory, but for maximum tactical advantage. They looked like Therosians, but they were fighting like something entirely new. The contrast became clear within minutes of the first assault. The eastern wall erupted in a spectacular display of individual heroics as Therosian warriors met the Vorthak charge with traditional fury. Each fighter carved through enemies with devastating efficiency, their natural advantages making them terrifying opponents. For a brief moment, it seemed like courage and skill might triumph over numbers. But the Vorthak had learned from previous encounters. They did not meet strength with strength or try to match individual prowess. Instead, they flowed around the strongest defenders like water around rocks, using their perfect coordination to isolate and overwhelm each warrior in turn. No matter how many enemies a single fighter killed, there were always more, always attacking. From unexpected angles, Alex watched with growing horror as the eastern defense began to crumble. These were some of the finest warriors he had ever known, beings whose personal combat skills bordered on the supernatural. But they were fighting as individuals against an enemy that functioned as a single organism. One by one, they fell. The Western Wall told a different story. When the first Vorthak reached the coordinated defenders, they encountered something their hive mind had never experienced before. Not individual warriors to be isolated and destroyed, not a rigid formation to be broken through superior numbers, but something fluid and adaptive that seemed to anticipate their every move. Shen stood at the center of one defensive group, no longer the reckless young warrior who had once charged blindly into danger. Around him, 4 other fighters moved in perfect harmony, each aware of his position and role in the larger battle. When Vorthak attackers tried to flank them, the group shifted smoothly to counter the threat. When enemies massed for a concentrated assault, they gave ground in good order, drawing the attackers into a carefully prepared crossfire. The key difference was that each warrior remained an individual, making independent decisions based on his assessment of the immediate situation. But those decisions were informed by constant awareness of the larger tactical picture. They fought as one while thinking as many, combining the flexibility of individual initiative with the power of coordinated action. Alex coordinated the defense from his command position, using his scanner to track enemy movements and relay information to the defending groups. But he was not controlling them like a general commanding troops. Instead, he was enabling them, providing information that helped each warrior make better individual decisions. The result was a defense that adapted constantly to changing circumstances while maintaining overall coherence. The Vorthak Queen seemed to sense that something was different about this battle. Her massive form moved closer to the front lines, her telepathic commands driving her swarm to more desperate attacks. Wave after wave of insects crashed against the Western defenses, but each assault was met with perfectly coordinated resistance that gave ground when necessary and struck back. When opportunities arose, hours passed and the tide of battle began to turn. The Vorthak's perfect unity, which had been such an advantage against traditional defenders, became a liability against opponents who could think and adapt. When the insects tried a flanking maneuver, the defenders anticipated it and shifted to counter. When they attempted a feint, followed by a concentrated assault, the Thyrosians saw through the deception and prepared appropriate responses. More importantly, the coordinated defenders were learning and improving as the battle progressed. Each engagement taught them new lessons about working together, about reading each other's intentions, about anticipating enemy moves. They were becoming something greater than the sum of their parts, while the Vorthak remained exactly what they had always been. The breakthrough came when Alex spotted an opportunity that no individual fighter could have exploited. The Queen had moved too close to the front lines, confident in her swarm's ability to protect her. But her massive size and limited mobility made her vulnerable to coordinated attack if enough warriors could reach her simultaneously. Alex's voice carried across the battlefield as he outlined the plan through hand signals and shouted commands. 20 warriors from different defensive groups began moving toward the Queen's position, their advance covered by coordinated fire from their companions. The Vorthak responded immediately, countless drones rushing to protect their leader. What followed was the most complex tactical maneuver in Thyrosian history. Multiple groups of warriors advanced through the chaos of battle, each following an independent path but all working toward the same goal. When one group was blocked, others adapted their routes to compensate. When defenders were needed elsewhere, warriors broke off to handle new threats without compromising the overall plan. The Queen realized her danger too late. Her telepathic commands became frantic as she tried to coordinate a defense against attackers who seemed to be everywhere at once. But her perfect unity worked against her. The swarm could only respond to her specific commands, while the attacking Thyrosians adapted their tactics in real time based on individual judgment and mutual cooperation. Shen struck the first blow, his spear finding a gap in the Queen's armored hide. Instantly, a dozen other warriors exploited the opening, their attacks perfectly timed to support each other. The Queen's death cry shattered the morning air as her massive form collapsed, crushing dozens of her own drones beneath her weight. The effect on the remaining Vorthak was immediate and catastrophic. Without their Queen's telepathic guidance, the perfect coordination that had made them so dangerous simply vanished. Individual insects milled about in confusion, their hive mind shattered. The surviving Thyrosians, both traditional fighters and newly trained coordinators, fell upon them with devastating effect. By noon, the battle was over. The greatest Vorthak swarm in the planet's history lay scattered across the battlefield, their threat ended forever. The cost had been heavy, particularly among the traditional defenders who had fought with individual heroics against impossible odds. But the settlement had survived, and with it, hope for the future. Krath, still weak from his wounds but strong enough to stand, approached Alex as the cleanup began. The great chieftain's yellow eyes held a new understanding, a recognition of something profound that had occurred during the battle. "Your people," Krath said slowly, choosing his words with care. "They are not strong like us, not fast like us, not tough like us. But they have something else." Alex nodded, understanding what the chieftain was struggling to express. "We learned to be more than what we are individually, to choose to work together while staying ourselves. The Vorthak worked together, but they are not themselves. We stayed ourselves, but did not work together. Your way—" Krath paused, searching for the right concept. "Your way keeps both." Around them, Thyrosian warriors were discovering the same truth. They had fought as a coordinated force without losing their individual identity. They had supported each other without becoming mindless drones. They had learned what humans had discovered millennia ago, that the greatest strength came not from perfect unity or perfect individualism, but from free-willed beings choosing to work together. As the days passed and the settlement began to recover, Alex found himself no longer just a stranded explorer. He had become something unprecedented in Therosian culture, a teacher of war, a guide who had shown them a new way of being. Other settlements sent representatives to learn these strange new tactics. The revolution he had started would spread across the entire planet. The rescue ship arrived 3 weeks later, its crew amazed to find Alex not just alive but thriving among the alien predators. He could have left immediately, returned to human space and his old life. But as he looked around at the warriors who had become his friends, at the society he had helped transform, he realized something important. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy, nor the most intelligent nor the most numerous, but they had stumbled upon a form of organization that transcended individual limitations while preserving individual freedom. It was a gift that could be shared, a strength that could be taught. Alex remained on Thyros for another year, helping to establish training programs and coordinate the planet's defenses. When he finally returned to human space, he carried with him the knowledge that humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy might not be their technology or their exploration, but their ability to show others how free beings could choose to stand together. The universe was full of predators and prey, of hive minds and lone hunters. But somewhere between those extremes lay a third path, one that humanity had discovered through accident and necessity. It was the path of coordinated free will, of unity through choice rather than compulsion. And perhaps, Alex thought as his ship carried him back to the stars, it was the most powerful force in the galaxy.